business partnerships, they say, are like marriages. And like Tony Robbins always says, your partner is your greatest source of joy or pain in your life. Some of us know that more than others. But it's the same thing, when you spend a lot of time when you start doing business or a transaction with somebody. So I have fired clients that were paying clients because they were such a source of pain. I don't need that in my life. There's 10 other people that I can go find to do business with, and the amount of time that you are consuming of my life.
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudy and Aniston, and this is Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. I'm Rudy Ricksteins. I'm your host, and I'm excited to introduce you today to two very, very powerful powerhouses inside of life and in business. And in the Empowered Life Podcast, we love to remind you that you can have, be, do, and achieve anything and everything. And today's two guests have achieved a tremendous amount of success individually and collectively. And like everyone in life, when we go through a journey, we have a vantage point at the end of having had that journey. And in having had that journey, we get to turn around and do something with that information from having that vantage point. And Shawn and Debbie are doing exactly that. They are turning around and sharing lovingly everything that they've learned, everything that they know in the pursuit of supporting and developing other people. And they happen to be doing this in the world of entrepreneurship, which is speaking directly into my heart. So I'm excited to welcome to you today two powerhouses, Shawn Finnegan and Debbie Hart. Thank you and welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast.
Thanks so much, Rudy. Really appreciate
Rudy.
it.
Yeah, I love your message.
Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. And I'm really excited to have you here. Obviously, I've done a little bit of homework in preparing for our interview today, and I got to jump around and see some of the things that you've touched and some of the people that you get to work with and the achievements that you've been able to create. And I'm not a big person in talking about how successful somebody is and having that define who they are and where they've gone. But I think that there's a level of success that needs to be mentioned when you're talking about learning certain skills and being able to turn around and demonstrate them. And, when I look at what you've done individually and then collectively from your podcast, the Ignition Point podcast, where you are bringing on some of the most incredible speakers, people that have already done and achieved as much as you have. And then you're just sharing feedback, tips, support, and encouraging people. And you're not just doing it to people that are high achievers in life who are now going to continue to funnel, money into your business. You're touching people of all ages, which is speaking into my heart. You coach individuals, you support and host events and retreat centers for anywhere from 15 going all the way up. And I love so much that you are touching people at such a young age. I would love for you to start the very beginning of the episode today, if you don't mind, by speaking into a little bit about, who or what is entrepreneurship for? Because it's obviously not for everybody. So many people are stuck in a day job, but you have very successfully navigated so many industries and continue to do so. So let's define, what is entrepreneurship?
So I love the question, and we're all about this. We love on our podcast talking about what was that ignition point that really was the spark that started their business, and what were the hard times, that they endured, because we know that I've yet to see an easy business, so there's a lot of hard times, a lot of failures, a lot of problems involved. We love entrepreneurship at all ages. Debbie is the founder of an event called Teenpreneur, which gives back to the community with teenagers, because this education around entrepreneurship isn't necessarily in our public school system or even with their families. Mm-hmm. And so she created an event, what was it, about a year ago?
June of last year.
June of last year. And it's the whole event is designed around teenpreneur. It's teaching teenagers entrepreneurship. And we just finished our third event 2 weeks ago.
Which was different. It was the first pitch fest. So we took the teens that had come to the first few that had speakers. And so they learned about, the ideas and the inspiration, and then we gave them some resources, and a few of those teens took those resources, started actually building businesses. And so we had a pitch fest a couple of weeks ago. We got local business owners to come and donate cash for seed money and mentorship. And they came and they developed an actual pitch deck. They did their presentation. They received the hard, they took those hard questions and took that hard feedback. And then they won some of them won money and mentorship and even some prizes at the end. They also had a market. Several of them had built products already over the course of a year. And so they came and they were selling those as well.
Well, one example is one of the teens showed up with this fluorescent pink full suit, black tie, looking great. And these teens, I mean, they took it serious. They've been working on it since January, a lot of them.
They took it
beginning of the year, they took it serious, and they had to give that, that electric moment when you stand on stage and everyone's staring at you and it's scary. And these teens by themselves, no parents, stood up there. Mm-hmm. And his presentation in particular, he showed this bodybuilder with this strong back, and his business was he was going to buy salt for your home, those heavy salt bags for your soft water. And he did this big flex, and he said, "Use my back."
He said, "Don't break your back, use mine."
Use mine. And, that was
and then he did the flex like the picture in his bright pink suit.
Yeah, so his whole thing is, hey, I'll deliver the salts and I'll deliver them to your home. And it's just one of those moments that he'll remember forever. And we hope, it'll be one of those where he passes it down to his generation. Right?
It's scary enough for anyone to speak in public, but to know you're literally being judged. They were actually being judged, and they got up there and they presented and they pitched, and the news was there as well. So they were also being filmed, and we were on the news 4 times. And they were just, I wouldn't say they were fearless, but they were courageous. And, that's the future entrepreneurs of our communities. Those are the ones that are going to build the businesses and then provide future jobs here.
I love that you're touching people at such a young age and supporting people to understand, that your future's in your control and how you get to show up and how you get to prepare. And the younger that you start to enter that, the more successful or the better you're going to get over the speed bumps when you're moving into entrepreneurship. And so I started my questioning specifically around how do we really define who is entrepreneurship for and who is it not for? Because I wanted to lead us to my second question, but you touched on it before we had a chance to get there, and you used the word that I was wanting to go to. And you said sometimes in business, we hit hardships. And so I often find people are aspiring to leave their corporate jobs, their paycheck, their bonus, their 401k, and they're saying, I really want to be free. And so I really want to move forward and do something fun in life. And I want to be my own boss, but they don't necessarily know what they're walking into. You have achieved, again, both of you, so much success in your lives, and you've done it in so many different industries. And, we could name drop your business partners and your ventures and 9-figure companies that you've created. And that really speaks into the volume of success. But what I would love to do is to have you, if you don't mind, just share, each of you, what are some of the biggest hardships that you have faced that were crippling, that you didn't anticipate were coming, and then you still managed to overcome them and drive the success of what you've ultimately created today?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
We always have this thing because we do a lot together. We try to give each other that look. And so
I gave the look first.
I love that you your question's brilliant because I love this lane that you talk about because
this is the lane that we stay in.
Yeah.
This is what I explained before he shares his story about the podcast. We don't ask them the 10 steps of success. You can get that on every podcast out there. Daily affirmations, gratitude journals, cold plunges. Everybody knows the 5 a.m. morning routine club stuff, but it's the hard stuff that you need to be aware that's coming. No amount of affirmations are going to prevent, betrayals by business partners or not being able to make payroll or so those stories are what we've shared. And yes, we only interview people that have achieved a certain level of success so that we can inspire people to hear the hardships, that to know they're coming, not to scare you, but to know you can get past them. And how did these guys get past those moments? So what was one of yours?
I'll tell you one of mine. So 2009, I decided I'm unemployed at the time. And 2009, I decided I'm going to start my first major business. And, as you know, 2006, 7, 8, really bad time. to start a business? Well, I'm going to launch a business in 2009. I come from a family that has no money. Like my dad was a bookstore manager for 40 years. So it's not like I had come with a lot of resources. I had very, very minimal resources, and I decided I'm going to go plunge out there and start a business. And so literally me and 3 other people would meet in a sandwich shop. We had no office, and we had this spreadsheet in front of us, and we built this plan of doing live events where we could sell tickets and put people on stages. And according to that plan, we'd make millions of dollars. So I called it my spreadsheet millionaire plan, right? So I had this plan. I was going to make an impact on the world, excited. I love education. I love what you're doing and all the education and you know, planting the seeds in the mind of people. So now that I had my plan, I needed to go raise money for the first time in my life, which is a scary experience going to raise. I met with 60 angel investors or so. And the pitch was, hey, I haven't created a dollar in my business, but here's my plan, and this is my passion, and this is what I'm going for, excited. And that's kind of how the pitch sounded. I got 23 of them to give me $1.5 million in funding. And so if you were getting a time machine and go back to that day where now I was, even on my LinkedIn, I was a CEO now, and I had a small team around me, and I had 1.5 in the bank from zero. I felt like I was the king of the world. You know, I did it. And Kevin O'Leary is partners with TaxHive, and one of his great quotes is, in business, poo-poo happens, right? And for me, poo-poo happened for the next 12 months. And anything you can think of, I probably had some similar mistake in operations, sales, marketing, you name it. Like, give you an example, I had one event where we booked David Bach, the automatic millionaire, booked him to speak, paid him like 70 grand or something. And my marketing hit like a week after the event. So I had 12 people show up, and I really wanted 1,000 people showing up. It was just a miserable. So you name it, I made mistakes to where I lost 1.5 million in 12 months. Gone. In fact, not gone all the way, because I had $2,500 in the bank on a Thursday night. And the next day payroll was due, and payroll was $3,500. So I was $1,000 on payroll. And so I took off the automatic deposits. It's on Thursday night. I don't sleep a wink that night. Miserable. Just pit in your stomach. I remember just lying down on my bed, looking at my ceiling all night long. How am I going to come up with this the next day? And I'm praying for literally a miracle in the morning, and nothing happens. I don't get a deposit. There's no money. I'm down $1,000, so I've already done the math on what it means for the people, and I have to go meet with them and tell them this. So I go to lunch, and me and my partner are meeting at the time, but this time I've hawked my house, I've hawked my cars, and my credit cards are full. I mean, there's no resources. I've done everything. And we're meeting, and I get a phone call from my controller, and she's like, hey, Shawn, I was digging in the safe, and I found $3,000 in petty cash or something like that. It was like $2,500, $3,000. She's like, what do you want me to do with that? And I was like, I want you to hang on to that money. And I drove back to the office and picked up the $3,000 in cash, went to the bank, and I literally deposited the $3,000 in cash at the bank. And for whatever reason that stuck in my mind, I wrote physical checks with the teller. The brown shading of the check, everything is stuck in my mind, because that's a contract that represented that I made payroll that day. And then I took those checks back, and I hand delivered each check, and we made it by $1,000 or so that week. And so a lot of times people talk about problems in business, which we all face and still do. But there's also a pain that's associated with that. And there's two different things. And for me, I had really deep pain involved. Physical, pit in your stomach, miserable pain. And so I use that, I ask entrepreneurs all the time, what motivates you more? Is that pain and the problems, or is it the success? And most people I talk to, they would say pain and problems. And I use that to fuel myself. Literally, I started Friday afternoon, and I said, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to bring in salespeople. I need revenue. First sale was on a Wednesday. It was like $4,000. And so I made payroll again. And then the second thing is I'm going to build relationships in business, because as I looked at old pictures of entrepreneurs, rarely are they by themselves They're with someone.
No one is self-made.
Yes.
No one is self-made.
So I was like, I gotta admit to myself, I've failed on my own, and I need to build relationships. And so I went on a mission to build relationships. I landed a couple of incredible partners. They had incredible resources, and we went on this crazy run for the next few years where we were able to pay off the original investors, the 1.5 plus interest. And we went on this run, but it was mainly because of building relationships in business. So I'm a big believer in the greatest way to scale is scale relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before you move on, Debbie, and share your story, because I'm excited to hear yours, I just want to touch on something for the benefit of the audience. You know, Shawn, you mentioned that Kevin O'Leary is a partner in Tax Hive. What you failed to mention, humbly, is that he's your partner in Tax Hive, that you're an investor in Tax Hive. And this is Kevin O'Leary, just to put it into perspective. And you know, you're talking about hitting payroll. And so I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I had 4 companies between the ages of 25 and 32, and I was having to hit payroll 4 times a week, you know, for 4 different businesses while I was trying to figure out life. And people say, oh, that looks so easy. And then you just so beautifully articulated what is it like to be an entrepreneur when you're starting. What I want to do is anchor in the fact that that very business you were describing, where you were struggling to hit payroll, you turned it into a $100 million a year in revenue business. And so it takes a certain level of drive and commitment to push through those moments to get to the other side. And so many people stop before they get to the other side. I want to move to that in a moment, but I have to hear Debbie's story first.
His is so much better.
Just quickly, I absolutely love what you said, and all the people I've studied and learned about. It's surprisingly, like, you know, you got Elon Musk in 2008. He went through a divorce that year. He almost lost both of his businesses, was down to 30 million from his PayPal exit, and he had to split the 15 per business. I mean, it doesn't matter who you study. The 2 things I've found in common is failures, bad, hard failures, plus persistence is the key, right? And that's what you just hit. It's like you deal this, but you gotta get back to work.
That's exactly what I was going to lead with, is that it's not a one-time story. He shared one story of many, right? Same with me. Even it happened again last night. An old business partner with a tiny little venture suddenly decided I owe him a bunch of money. I'm like, oh, again? Okay, next. But it's on repeat, right? And I love that you're also a life coach and a personal development coach as well as a business coach.
That's what you need.
It's what you need, because you have to have that resiliency. You have to know that this is coming over and over again. And I like to say that entrepreneurship is actually the world's best personal development program, because that's where you find out if you are really resilient, because it doesn't end. Every level has another devil, right? It doesn't end. And that's where you find out if you can actually create your own reality, is to build a business, right? So for me, my hardest one was my origin story. I knew nothing about business or entrepreneurship, was not raised that way, had no network. 12 years ago, I was just a stay-at-home homeschooling mother of 6, got married right out of high school, immediately had 4 kids in the first 5 years, because that was my duty, you know. And so I was going to go to school someday when my youngest was in school, but someday never came. And I had not developed a career. And so suddenly, literally overnight, I lost my spouse, my income, and my home. We had a few minutes for the 7 of us to find somewhere to live. It ended up being with someone we'd only known a couple months in a little duplex. She had 5 kids, one with autism. We were sleeping on cots on the floors and whatever we could to survive. So because I hadn't developed a career and had no degree, I couldn't even get a normal job that would cover daycare for 6 kids, let alone living expenses. So I learned to make money because I had, on my own terms, because I had to. And so I got a certification that was in that line, you know, in personal development. And I saved up, and then I got the next one. And I saved up and I got the next one. And I built and I built and I built. The only way I knew how, until I started learning about networking and so I started out with, you know, B&I groups and things like that, and just built it all from there. But I'd always been a coach, right? I just had always been into psychology. So building that off of my natural skills was what came natural and normal to me. But, so the journey is different for everybody. When we interview entrepreneurs, that's why I want to know their ignition point. Because it's a defining moment when you decided enough is enough, I'm going to forge my own way. A lot of people go through these hard journeys, like we interviewed Dan Martell, who's wildly successful now, but he started out in prison and selling drugs, that kind of entrepreneur. And so many people end up doing that for the rest of their lives. So what was your defining moment that made you decide that you're going to now use these skills to make the world a better place, make your life a better place? So that's what we want to know. Because everyone goes through hard things. No one escapes life unscathed. But what makes one person get better instead of bitter? What makes one person rise and achieve and become driven and ambitious from that? And what makes someone else just roll over and become a victim for the rest of their life? So that's the ignition point story, right? Is your defining moment, but you have to choose. So that's why the fire is a logo. The logo is a fire. Because it's fire, right? That's a painful moment, but are you going to let that fire consume you or refine you? So that ignition point became a refiner's fire, but it's an internal decision, as you know, because you did the same thing.
So I would love to share my ignition point with you at a later date, because today's not about me, but you're speaking into my soul. And so I would love to ask you, you talk about riches are made in the follow through. And I think that that's where so many people get caught or get stuck up in entrepreneurship. I'm actually going to blanket that and say just in life in general. You want to have something, be something, do something, and then you're not taking steps to be able to do it. It's because you're not following through. But I'd love for you to speak into a little bit about how riches are specifically made in the follow through.
I can give you a quick example. I do 3 events. A lot of people go to masterminds and events, and what I found is most people just don't follow through. They might make an initial connection and a seed. I'll give an example. So there was this event that I was actually helping promote. It was at Space Station in Utah. It's an incredible facility. But I woke up that day and I was like, I don't want to go to this. It's like, I just have 1,000 things I'm supposed to be doing. I decide, okay, that's probably why I need to go to this. I need to take time out and I need to connect with people. I go to this event. I meet an entrepreneur. His name is Devin Johnson. He is the CEO of Connected. He came right up to me and we made this connection. And we did what most entrepreneurs aren't willing to do. We actually pulled out the calendar and actually set a time to meet. I've done 3 businesses now with Devin since that meeting, and he's become one of my very best friends. And I think about that often is like, what if I didn't go? And number 2, what if I didn't actually follow through? What if I did what most entrepreneurs do? It's like, so great to meet you. Maybe I got your number, but then I get home and it's almost like that awkward, hey, I met you at the thing. Instead of like, hey, let's pull out our calendar right now and set it for Thursday and do a follow-up. Because if someone makes sense where there's an alignment, that's when you should follow through.
It's funny because I do the same thing when I meet someone and I feel a connection, I schedule it right then. And it's amazing how many people are surprised that you do that. They're like, wow, you make things happen. I'm like, well, don't you? Aren't you in business to make things happen? But again, that's opened doors for me too. They're like, wow, you're just a go-getter. And then because I do that, I get put on more stages and more podcasts and get more, I must learn from him, but it opens the doors of opportunity when people see that you are an action taker and you are your word. You do what you say you're going to do. I have too many people in my life that don't do what they say they're going to do, so I have to remove them because you've got all these things depending on people who say what they're going, do what they say they're going to do. So you've got to be, once you are that person, you attract those kind of people, and that's where that magic happens.
So there were so many lessons in that, and I love to recap in the event that anyone was texting or doing something and they missed it. First thing I want to point out is whenever you're wanting to do something in life, align with somebody who's going to be your biggest cheerleader, because Debbie's telling Shawn how amazing Shawn is. Shawn's telling Debbie how amazing Debbie is. And you're doing this continuously throughout the show. And Imagine if you had somebody, this is to the listener, in your corner that's constantly telling you how freaking awesome you are. And it's just in every moment and every day, what would you be able to achieve? And then the second thing is that in every single moment, we like to remind people that is a divinely orchestrated moment. Everything that happens is always by design. And when you wake up in the morning and you feel like you don't want to go and you end up going anyway, it's because there's value and meaning for you later that day. And then when you make the commitment to show up, not only show up, but show up as the best version of yourself, and that when you're in front of somebody, you make the commitment because that moment's happening, there's value and meaning there to then further investigate and follow through. But Debbie added another layer that was just so genius. And then she said, I checked in with myself. She used different terminology, but she was like, if I felt in alignment with the person I was speaking with, then I would take action. And you see so many people either just take action because it's out of fear and they're just trying to create connection and it's not necessarily aligned, or they are too nervous to be able to take committed action.
Not everyone is a good client, and not everyone is a good business partner fit.
No.
You do become like the people you spend the most time around. And, business partnerships, they say, are like marriages. And like Tony Robbins always says, your partner is your greatest source of joy or pain in your life. Some of us know that more than others. But it's the same thing, when you spend a lot of time when you start doing business or a transaction with somebody. So I have fired clients that were paying clients because they were such a source of pain. I don't need that in my life. There's 10 other people that I can go find to do business with, and the amount of time that you are consuming of my life,
Absolutely.
I mean, your breakdown of that too, Rudy, was brilliant. What you just laid out there is so true. It's how you show up. Because I'm going to so many events and I'm doing so much engagement, I've been trying to really practice that piece, which I look at those doors at any event as a portal. And when you walk through that portal, you transform into the very best version of yourself, really there to engage with people. And I've been doing something recently where I smile the second I open up that door, and I walk right to the center of the room, and I go up to the promoter and I just stand there. And I've been amazed what that does. I can always tell someone who's uncomfortable and is not really in it when they go to the corner of the room and they're on their phone just checking texts, and they're missing
why are you even here?
So many people are standing right in front of them, like you just said. Hey, show up as your best
They're here
self.
to meet you. That's what networking is for.
Do it right.
He's the king of this. Actually, I'm just going to. It's not hype. This is true.
She's seen me do this,
This
right?
is so true. This is literally who he is. From before I even met him, there was like this huge network of people that I kept hearing, oh my gosh, Shawn Finnegan changed my life. Shawn Finnegan did this for me. This is how we met. So many people that said that about him. I was like, well, who's doing nice things for this guy? So I just found him in the hallway and I said, so many people have had their lives changed by you, and we don't even know each other, but I just want to give you a present. But it's never ended with this guy. Literally, I have never met anybody like this that has this level of positive feedback, and I've never heard anything alternative. I even put a video together of some of the thank yous of people who, high achievers, high levels of success, and they all credit Shawn Finnegan.
No, it's what you just noticed about how we build each other up. I love the book Who Not How, Dan Sullivan. And I think most entrepreneurs ask, how do I do this? How do I do this? And I've failed in that process of trying to do too much myself and be everything to everyone. You can't
do it all.
And when I first met Debbie, here's a single mom, butt-kicking mom, so efficient, so good. She's a rare combination of vision and integration, like I've never met before. And she's like, hey, I want to do this podcast. And I was like, I love podcasting, but I don't know how. And you have the how, and you're the who. So that's how we began the relationship with Ignition Point, and she's just been amazing.
I've actually heard you describe your relationship that way before, and I was curious if you'd read the book, because you never referenced the book when I heard you talking about it, but you did reference the who versus the how. And so, yes, I'm a big fan of finding who can support you in creating the how. I want to shift for a second, because you guys have so much wealth of knowledge in how you show up, and I don't know that if anybody knew who you were prior to coming into the episode or what we were going to be airing in this week's episode. But, what we're talking about is entrepreneurship. But what you're really doing is just giving us invaluable skills in how to show up in life. Find the right people to be alongside you, be encouraging and supportive, show up as the best version of yourself in every moment, be the brilliant you and don't be somebody else, and then align with people who align with you and where you're wanting to go. And then don't always look to yourself as the person that's going to be the solution. Find somebody else that's brilliant and bring them into the fold. So my question to you is, knowing all of what you've covered on this episode, which I think if we ended now would really be enough. It's so good. I would love to know from your lens, what are 2 common themes that you see in entrepreneurship that support people to be successful versus people that are failing?
I think for me, it's definitely what we just touched on, the who, not how. Making sure you are surrounding yourself with people who are doing what you want to be doing, who run at the pace you want to run at, who are like-minded. And that makes all of the difference. Because, again, no one is self-made. You can't get through this journey alone. I can't stand the question all the time when I get, because they're like single mom and businesses and all the things. And how do you do it all? I'm like, I don't do it all. I have a network of people that help with my kids when I'm here working. And I have people that, help take some of my coaching clients when I'm out networking. And you know what I mean? You have to have a support network for every area of your life. No one can do it all on their own. No one is self-made. So that would be my piece.
I agree with that. And what I've seen is I meet with business owners a lot, aspiring business owners specifically that I meet with. They're like, have an idea that they want to talk to me about. And the most common thing, I'll give you an example. I met with a friend of ours. Her name is Debbie. I met with her in December last year. And she's like, hey, I have this great idea for a podcast. I've been working on this. I have this branding idea and everything around this podcast. And I said, well, how long have you been thinking about this? She's like, years. I was like, you've been thinking about this podcast and this brand for years. When are you going to get your start? And it was this powerful moment of, she was like squirming. She's like, what do you mean start? Like, I was like, well, what's holding you back? She's like, I got to get the right equipment. I got to have technology. I got to have this. It was like a long list of things.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes. So I said, well, you make the date, because you set the date. It changes the focus will go there. Energy start flowing. Let's make the date. And she was like squirming. She's like, okay, let's do this. Let's make the date. And she made the date January 25th. And it was such a cool moment. The podcast concept was herself and her father, and the idea was talking about like young kind of millennial stuff to the father and having this conversation between a father and a daughter, which is really cool. She shows up January 25th at my office with her dad and her, and shot her first podcast. She's done 4 now. She has all this flowing energy, and to me it's always the start that stops you. It's like, once you get that start, it's not going to be right. It's not going to be great. You're going to fail. You're going to hopefully fail forward. But you've got to start somewhere. And people will sit on ideas for years without actually doing it. So
I just want to reiterate that. That's how we started the first teen entrepreneurship event. Just have an idea. Like, I live this principle too. I just had an idea. So 21 days, I set the deadline to just make it happen, right? And well over 100 people attended. And that's the feedback I got in the audience too from some of the adults. They're like, I've had this idea for years to do a teen event. I'm like, why didn't you? What's stopping you? I am definitely no more qualified than you. And I did it in 21 days.
Ready, fire, aim.
You have the idea, and then you set the deadline, and you just make it happen. You just take action knowing, you'll look silly and things will go wrong. But then that's how you improve for the next one.
I think you have sold everybody listening into why they need to tune in to the Ignition Point podcast on YouTube, because, that just speaks into, we pay a tremendous amount of money to get coaches to teach us how to take committed action. And that's the one thing that we all agree, based on what we've been talking about today, is what's missing in moving people forward in life. I knew at 16 that I was going to be a coach, that I was going to speak on stage, and that I wanted to impact people's lives at large. But it took me until I was 36 to do it. because I had the dream, the goal, the desire, but I wasn't worthy. I wasn't good enough. And so I believed I needed to make money. So I went into companies and started creating businesses and then turned them into companies. And eventually I made millions, but I still didn't have the confidence and the courage because who's going to listen to little old me? And so when you look at that as your life story and that's what holds you back, my point was my wife turning around and inviting random strangers to my house and saying, we're going to be talking on this topic and this is what's happening. And then eventually we had 100 people to come and, it just blew up into what it is today. And I'm often reminded, I've been awarded one of the top 5 coaches in the world. And I only share that because at one point in time, I would have been one of the top 5 couch surfers in the world if my wife didn't step in and say, you need to create this shift and here's what you need to be doing and take steps forward. And not everybody has a wife like mine or a business partner like the two of you. And so I'm going to encourage everybody who's aspiring to have or be able to do something to listen to you guys and take action. Because if you can at least start inside of 21 days, man, where would we all be? So please tell us a little bit about your podcast. I know we've alluded to it a lot throughout the show. I just want to tell you what I love so much about your show is that it's relatable. There's no look at me while I talk about how great I am on your show, which to me is just slime. But your show's also 17 minutes, 13 minutes, 19 minutes. It's 8 minutes. It's digestible, a punch in the mouth, and it makes you want to take action. And so outside of that, what are we going to gain from listening into the Ignition Point podcast?
Well, the one thing's for sure, after having this conversation, we need to have Rudy on our show.
Definitely, absolutely.
Because just that little piece of what you just shared is so powerful. And that you would have been the couch surfing versus going out and doing something. You took action and you had she really helped ignite that fire in you, which is a powerful concept there as well. But that little piece right there, we need to capture that and spend our time with you on the show, because that's exactly what we want to do. You just hitting that right there. We have 10 more questions for you.
Yeah, we do.
In that one piece, because after you did that, it probably wasn't a smooth sailing road. And that's what it's all. This is what we're demonstrating. This is what it's about.
That's exactly it. I just thought of Bridger Pennington's episode, and he was trying to run 6 businesses at once, and everything was failing because he was trying to do all the things. But his advice at the end was that he's like, with $500 in 3 weeks, you can test out something to see if it's going to be viable or not.
I think you just answered my question in what are we going to get from your podcast? With $500, we get to test 3 things. We get to take committed action. And so your podcast is exclusive on YouTube. It is the Ignition Point podcast. I want to stress for everybody, this is an entrepreneurship podcast, but please, if you are not an entrepreneur, listen in anyway, because I'm going to tell you they're going to awaken something within you. You don't know who you are until you get there. And there's so much to learn. There's so much value to gain. Debbie Hart, thank you so much for joining us. Shawn, Finnegan, man, I appreciate you guys so much for your time. Thank you for pouring into us on the Empowered Life podcast, for reminding us that we can have and be and do and achieve anything. And you're only getting started. When I look at everything the two of you have achieved, you're literally only getting started, and you're an example of what's possible. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us.
Absolute honor.
Yes.
Appreciate it
so much, man. Appreciate you guys. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening. And we'll tune into the next episode of the Empowered Life podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.